morning. I'm here a little bit early. Oops, sorry. I'm here a little bit early today so that I could answer some questions and see who's here and where you're from and all of that fun stuff. So when you join in, just type in that you're here, and I'd love to say hi to you from wherever you are. A couple little things. If you turn off all of your other streaming devices, you'll get a better picture and you won't have any delay. So just check to see that you don't have everything else open. And let's see who's here. Oh, hi Astrid. Astrid, I haven't painted with you in so long. Astrid's from New Jersey. I'm sitting here in central Pennsylvania. I paint mostly realistically and with just not quite as much detail so that I can have a little bit of, more fun for me. So let's see who else is here. Marcia Elaine. Hi Sharon. How are you? If I don't know you, or, just type in where you're from. Or if we've never met in person, let's put it that way. I have a lot of friends on Facebook, but I don't always get to see them in person or to actually see their face. So we're going to start here in a few minutes. I just thought I'd show you one of the rooster paintings I have painted. Marshall, thank you for loving my rooster. I love painting roosters. They make me so happy. And I think it's because you get to use colors that you don't normally use. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to just have a lot of fun painting roosters. Oh, Marcia's from Missouri. Thanks, Astrid. Hi, Karen. How are you? So, love that you're here. I'm trying a little bit of a different camera setup this time, so you can actually see me. And since I can't paint small roosters. I could paint small roosters, but it's not as much fun because you don't have as much room to do all the detail, like the feathers and the eyes. So the canvas I'm working on today is a 20 by 24, and it's going to give me a lot of room to actually show you how to do the feathers. So let me just point this over again so you can see. This is one of the rooster paintings I've done, and we're going to do something similar. Hi, Elizabeth. We're going to do something similar to this one. Here's the photo I've picked out for today. So we're going to do this guy because I love the colors in here, and I get to exaggerate the colors. So when we start, I'll talk more about that. I have I've done many roosters. I unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure how to think about it, I don't have a lot of them. This one's probably my favorite because when I started this one, I was going to do a whole body, and then I started painting and I just thought, I don't want to do this. Like, this is not interesting to me. And what was really interesting was his head and these little bits of tail feathers that you could see. So I just took some turpentine and I erased everything I had, and I just painted his face and a little bit of tail, whatever would fit on my canvas, and that made me really much happier. So just to let you know that everything doesn't always turn out the way you expect it's going to. So having a little bit of don't be afraid to erase, to start over again. Hi Vera. Hi Charlotte. We are just a few minutes early, so if you have any questions or if you just want to say hi and where you're from, I'd love to hear that. Just going to talk a little bit before we actually get started. And if you don't know me, or if this is the first time you've tuned in, I'm Lena Ferrara, and I am from central Pennsylvania. So I've changed my camera angle a little bit from the other videos so that you get to see a little bit more of my arm and the brush strokes. And because we're painting a rooster, it just, I have to have a little bit of room to be able to be a little more free. The brush strokes come from the shoulder when you're trying to do the feathers. And then if you're just painting with a little tiny strokes, it's just not the same. So that's the switch, and hope you enjoy it. So we are going to start in a few minutes. I was telling people, if you do have things streaming, if you have multiple things open on your device that you're watching this on, just close them and you will get a better picture. You won't get the delay or the little circle that we all dread. So, and I'm from Central Pennsylvania. We have lots of chickens in Central Pennsylvania, and I'm something of a chicken stalker. So if I see a chicken, I'll pull over off the side of the road, and hopefully if I have my camera with me there, I go after them with the camera. They most often run away. So I have tons of pictures of chickens retreating, but every once in a while you get a really good photo. I did give you a few tips this week, and I wrote it on my blog post, so I will tell you about. So if you want to see the tips, my 5 best tips for painting ravishing roosters. That's on my blog at lena-ferrara.com. If you're already a newsletter subscriber, I will be sending you the links to all that right after the video's done. So look for that in your email. And if you want to know anything else about me, you can go over to my blog, to my newsletter. No, you can go over to my website, and read whatever you like. See more rooster pictures if that's what you like. So let's have a view of this one. Hi Rose, hi Jillian, and hi Eleni. Nice to see you here. I still have just a few minutes before we get started. So if you just joined us, we're going to be painting a full body today because it's a little bit easier than doing just the face. A little less stressful. And then once you've gotten that down, that movement, the feather movement, you can go ahead and maybe we can do a close-up on another Facebook Live. And if you have any ideas for something you would like to see me paint, just type it in. I'm open to doing, just about any kind of painting that you'd like to see. So good to see everybody who's joined, and I'm going to start here in just a few minutes. So let's go back to the canvas size is, hi Becky, hi Sherry, hi Rose. The canvas size I'm working in is on 20 by 24. I'm going to be painting for an hour, so I'm hoping that I get most of it done. I probably won't get the background done, but no big deal. So I did want to show you something else on this one before we actually start painting. I think I talked when I painted the chick for you, I talked a little bit about getting grass, the effect of grass, without really painting grass. So I'm going to see if I can get a close-up on this. If you can see that it looks like grass from back here when I hold the painting back, but when I show you up close, there's really very little grass that's painted, maybe just a few little pieces in the front. The rest of it's just really brush strokes. So the way I got that, and you can go back and look at the chick painting, and you'll get a little bit better explanation that you can always, actually watch. Hi Karen, hi Gail, hi Suzanne. Nice to see you. I'm glad you're here. All right, let me start off. The thing that's different when I paint roosters from when I paint anything else is that I don't premix my colors. So normally I have little piles of paint here on my palette that are, mixes. The mixes you do see are just leftover mixes from last week that were still good, so I didn't want to scrape them off. But I just put out my paints and use them relatively pure. I also put out colors that I don't usually use, like I have phthalo turquoise out, I have dioxin purple, I hope I have that out, yes, phthalo blue. Those colors are on the blog post that I wrote. Hi Charlotte, hi Karen. Oh, I already said hi to Karen. Anyway, so I for those of you who just joined, I did put my 5 best tips for painting roosters on my blog post. So that's over at my website, lena-ferrara.com. If you want to read about that. And also, if you get my newsletter, I send that to you automatically, so you don't have to worry about looking for that. So I'm going to use a bigger brush than I normally use because this is a much bigger canvas than I was painting on before. And I'm also using walnut oil. So that's not the only medium I use. That's my go-to medium. But I also like Neo-Meg Lip. Sometimes I'll use liquid, but the smell of liquid is a little bothersome, so I try not to use that. Especially if, you know, you're going to be in an enclosed space. You don't want to use anything that's going to cause you not to breathe correctly. Okay, so I have a bristle brush, and I'm just going to start off with the drawing for you here. And if you've watched me before, you know that I don't draw necessarily. I don't draw with the pencil. I'll draw with some paint. I'm starting off with a little bit of transparent red and just ultramarine blue. And that's going to give me a nice dark color. I'm going to have to dip into my oil because it's not going to move for me otherwise. And I'm going to give myself parameters. This helps my rooster not grow too large, you know, where his feet get cut off. I know that tail's going to go here. And I want to make sure that I don't have the same distance from here to here as here to here. I know that the tail's going to grow, so I'm going to start off with this line, but it's going to definitely get bigger than that. And I want to make sure that I have room for his feet, so I'm going to give myself a little guideline down there also. Hi Valerie, hi Ken, hi Conchita. Here, if you just joined me, I'm painting roosters today. And if you want to get a little more step-by-step or know a little bit more about it, I did write a blog post. It's over on my website, lena-ferrara.com, and you can get my 5 tips for painting ravishing roosters. So I'm just giving myself guidelines right now. So I don't want the head to come up higher than this. I don't want his chest to come out any further than that because I want to have space around it so that it doesn't look like he's crowded in on the canvas. And I want you to take a little notice here before I start painting. Look at how much smaller his head is than the rest of his body. His head is his body might be about 8 head lengths. So if you look at the proportion, that's really important because you don't want to have his head too big so that he looks like he doesn't fit on that body. This is always a shocker to me. It always seems like that head should be bigger than that, but it isn't. So the other thing I want to talk to you a little bit about, you'll see that I measured with my brush. When I measure this rooster from head to foot, I get a length, right? And then I'm going to look on the canvas. So I'm going to he's a little over twice the size of my photograph. So why that's important is then it just gives me a guideline. So say if I want to get how big is his head? Well, okay, if it's about twice, it's going to start there and end about here. So that gives me a little bit of a guide. Doesn't that look tiny? You know, you would think that's not right. But it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, that's about right. So I like to try to measure some of these things. Some of them I'm just eyeballing, but I've painted a lot of roosters. I don't want to get too far down because he needs room for legs. Let me get the photo out Okay, so I can keep going here. And there, okay, if this is the top of his head, I'm gonna bring his comb up just a little bit. And then this is his actual head. The tail is not as high as the head. The tail ends about where his wattle and ear flap. The wattle's the part in the front. He doesn't have a real big one. Chickens are all different. Okay, even within a breed. I'm going to try not to tell. I don't know that much about chickens. I am an animal lover, and I studied agriculture when I went to college. I was a dairy science major. What does that have to do with anything? Now, you know, I just I know a little bit about roosters and cows because I study them. But beyond that, I just love them, and I love the colors. And hi, David. Hi, Judy. So I'm just starting to give myself an outline where his. To see how it's already growing. I don't want to get up against the end of the canvas, but this is about where I'd like to end him. Just going to give him some leg. The other thing that's important when you're doing birds or you're doing any kind of animals is that attitude, the angle that between their head and their legs, because you can see he's on a mission. This guy's moving forward. So if I take a line from his head to his leg, I want to make sure that I've captured that line correctly. So the tilt of his head has a lot to do with how he appears to you on canvas, how interesting it is, and how accurate. Right here, I see this little part called the saddle. I can pull that tail out a little bit more, but I'm not going to worry too much about the drawing. I've already got the basic shape in. The thing I do want to worry about is where his eye is positioned in relation to his beak, where his eye sits on his head. If you can get these proportions correct, the rest's a breeze, because this is really, really, really critical. I'm going to pull this in a little bit more so you can see. Astrid's afraid of the drawing. Hi, Kim. So nice to see you. Kim from New Jersey. Astrid, it is easy. And you know what makes it easier? Every time you do it. You do. And if it's wrong, you get a little bit of turpentine on your paper towel and wipe it off. So if you can just give yourself those guidelines to start and look for the proportions. But anyway, what I wanted to show you about this is that this is really critical. The distance between his eye and the back of his head, his eye in the front of his head, his eye in the beak, and the angle there. So I'll point out the things that are super important. The rest, not so much. So I'm going to put an eye in here. If I divide that head in half, it's behind the halfway point. So maybe it's about here. So let's put that in. And if I'm wrong, I'll erase it. And then that beak. And there's a slight angle. I'm going to measure it, but really I'm just trying to cement it in my mind where that angle is. So it's about there. That's the angle. And the beak is really close to the front of the head, so as I'm putting that front of the head in, I don't want it to come out that far, maybe right here. So I'll widen that. If the extra lines, and he looks stupid right now, but don't worry about that. And the beak comes into his head a little bit. This thing on his head, a little bit wider, and this angles. If you round him up like I had it rounded up to start with, it makes him look younger. It makes him look more like a chick. So we want to get rid of that. And right in here. Okay, so I have sort of what let me get this thing right here. This little there's like a little ear flap. And the eye sits in front of that ear flap. So let me move it over just a little bit. And then whatever is extraneous, I'll just wipe away. So he already starts looking a little bit like a rooster. All right, so I have that in. The next thing I want to look at is, where are my dark shapes? Because really, I have to create his body before I can go in for the feathers. If I don't have the shapes right and he doesn't look round, I can do all the beautiful feathers I want. I'm still going to have a weird looking or a flat looking rooster. So before we go to the fun part, we're going to get these dark shapes in. And there's quite a bit of darkness on this rooster, and that's part of the reason I picked this particular photo, because there's a dramatic difference between dark and light. It makes it much, much easier to paint something if you can see that big difference. And I wrote an article on my blog that tells you a little bit more about how to paint the rooster and what to look for. And it's called My 5 Best Tips for Painting Ravishing Roosters. And that's on lena-ferrara.com if you want to read that. I have some examples, with photos, so I'll make a little bit more sense. But for me, I have to watch somebody do it, so you get both. So the color I'm using now is just a little bit of ultramarine blue mixed with transparent red, and I'm getting the dark value in first. And I'm going to do this fairly quickly because I'd like to get most of him done in an hour, but also it's much more interesting to watch if I paint it fast. But it's more interesting for both of us. And you know what? I painted I don't know how many roosters, so I should be able to do it fast. Your first one, just take your time. I'm just getting an idea how big that dark value is. So I normally mix my color on my palette, except when I'm painting roosters. Then I just go in with my brush. Just trying to get that outside outline there. And I'm really just looking for the dark. If you squint, or if you make this a black and white photo, it might be easier for you to see these huge dark shapes. That's what I'm going for right now. So if you have any questions, just go ahead. Hi Marla, hi Barbara. If you just joined, I'm Lena Ferrara, and I am painting roosters for you today. You can go over to my website, lena-ferrara.com. I wrote a blog post that has, more step-by-step, more detailed information about the things that you would look for when you're trying to paint a rooster. And you know what? It's the same as painting anything. You're looking for the values and you're looking for shapes. So you want to put in your dark values first. And you don't want to be bogged down in the detail in the beginning, because it's almost like making a cake. You can't ice it until you have the cake done, right? It's kind of silly to start decorating it if you don't have a base. So what I'm doing right now is just putting a base in. And you can see that my color is shifting for a little bit more blue here, a little bit more brown there. I don't even know if I did that on purpose. I just kept picking up the two colors on my brush, and I don't even really mix them that well. Out in here is really, really black, and I know that I'd like to put in some other dark colors in here, because when I go to highlight them, I'm going to have some really pretty colors showing up. So out in here, I want to put some purples and some phthalo blue. I know phthalo blue, most people say beware of the phthalos, and you should be, but in the only instance I use them, I'll use them in water, and I love to use them in the rooster tail. So even though you see this little light splotch here in the tail, let's pull this up so you can see it. I'm going to ignore that. I'm just going to put all this whole tail in dark, and I'm going to put in as many pretty dark colors as I can. So I have some phthalo green. I have some alizarin crimson, and I don't. Sometimes when you have your photograph, you'll see where it has like a reddish tinge or a greenish tinge or a bluish tinge. I don't see that in this photo. I'm just going to make it up, and that comes from painting many roosters. I also love to use some purple. I didn't put Diox purple out, so I'm going to just mix it with ultramarine blue. I'll mix a violet with ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson quickly here on my brush and stick some. It's not going to be as pretty as Diox, but I don't want to take the time to go look for it. And the other thing that is important you might be seeing me do is I'm already thinking about the feather direction. If I don't get it perfectly right, it's not important at this stage, but the movement is important because it cements in your brain what you're doing. So I try to think about, while I'm painting the chest, you'll see that I go this way, up and down, because that's where how the feathers go. When I'm painting in the tail, even though it's dark and you're not going to actually see the feathers, I'm starting to get that movement. There may be some things that you do see. And the edges are raggedy. Now, I don't normally go and paint my background until the very end, so I'll paint in around it. And this way I can cut in places too if I got something too big. So right in here it's very dark. Actually, this whole thing is dark. If you have any questions, hi Jeanette. Hi Jessica from Williamsport. Yeah, if you have questions as I'm painting, please ask me because I am able to see them. Yay, I figured a little bit more out here on this, how to do these Facebook Lives, but let's see what else. Right in here, that's really dark. Okay, so let me talk a little bit more about that. I've divided it, so here's this huge dark shape, right? And then there's a little bit of dark right behind his wing that I've put in. And it may or may not be, quite accurate. I can always think about that later. But I also want to look for what's behind these feathers. So there's some darks in here that I'm going to put in now. And there's some darks actually right in here. Not as dark as those. But when you're first starting it and you're trying to dissect the photograph, just keep it as simple as possible. I'm only going to think about dark. Okay, then where's my light? I don't have too much light. I am going to exaggerate the light. I think most of his head's going to be light. And then medium. You only have 3 things to think about. So I've put in the dark. Let me just put an area in. I'm going to outline something for my light. I'm not going to use white because that's not going to help me later when I'm actually painting. So I'm going to just outline the light areas so you can see it. I probably wouldn't do this if I was painting by myself. But here in the wing, just going to say, okay, so this area is light. This area is light. His head is mostly light. So, light there. The rest is medium value, meaning it's not okay, so now I know I'm going to stay away from this light area and this light area. It extends a little bit out towards here too. So I'm just drawing that in for you. It's not a body part, it's a value area. So light value is a light or dark. So that's my terminology. Okay, it's not my terminology, but it's art terminology. I'm going to I want to have the darks that are underneath these feathers, but I don't want them to be as dark as this area. So I'm going to come in with just a little bit of same colors, transparent red and transparent red oxide and ultramarine blue, just more transparent red. And if I'm just going back and forth in the direction of the feathers. So when you're looking at the bird, the feathers are puffing out from his head this way. As you come toward the middle of his body, they're more straight up and down, and then they puff a little bit out there, but there's also quite a curve here, so I want to make sure I keep that. I don't want to make him too puffy so that it doesn't look natural, or he looks like he's, angry. All right, so there are different areas to the bird. So here's his neck. Then there's an area here on the wing, and if you look really closely at either this photo or the photo on my blog post. Hi, Jan. The photo on my blog post, you can see that the direction of the feathers changes. So I'm going to be really observant about that and really try to establish that even in this stage. Oh, that's a little too dark. Let's get more brown in there. And the brown I'm using is transparent red oxide. And one of the reasons I like transparent red oxide is because it's transparent, and then you can keep your darks transparent. Ultramarine blue is also semi-transparent, so that helps to keep those dark values, let them recede once we get everything on here. Okay, this is a little bit redder, so I'm just going to go in with straight transparent red right above that light value area, and then I can add another color to this and lighten it. This is a blue, so I don't want to mess with that. But out in here also it's mainly a reddish brown, so I'm just putting my base in then with the transparent red. So I did tell you to watch, your dark areas and your middle areas. We outlined the dark areas to start with, but it'll all look pretty dark to you probably. No, you can see some difference. So what I'm doing at this point is I'm filling in the color that's underneath the wings, because if I go straight into the value that I see and the color that I see, I'm not going to be able to show the wing. So I'm sorry, show the feathers, right? If it's and I'll show you more when we do the blue and when we get into the highlight area. But I need what's underneath it. I'm going to have to put that in sometime, either before or after I put that block of color in. I prefer to do it to start with because it's easier to get a feather shape. That's not how I do it when I paint other things. Okay, there's a little reddish piece here that I didn't get in. And right above the top part of his neck is pretty reddish on the edge. I'm going to leave this because I wanted, well, maybe right around his ear flap and his wattle. Right under his chin, really dark. I can reinforce that later. And right in the front of his neck, it's pretty dark. Okay, so that's pretty much filled in. Let's get to the light area. So I said, if I look at the light area, like there's this feather here or this grouping of feathers that is really quite, almost looks like yellow ochre, straight yellow ochre. I don't see too much within that grouping. I don't know how well you can see that. So, hi Pat and hi Marty. If you just joined me, you can type in where you're from. I love to see that. It's so exciting to me. I had somebody from Australia and from last week from Argentina and Brazil, and it's just so much fun to be able to connect with artists all over the world. So I'm going to add some yellow ochre, which is my go-to yellow. And I'm adding a little transparent red to it because this will give me a little bit of a chance to... No, I don't like that. I want to darken the yellow ochre so that I can show a nice highlight on it. So let me go, I'm going to darken it with just a little bit of violet that I had mixed on my palette already. If you're just joining me, my name's Lena Ferrara. I'm an artist in Central Pennsylvania, and I'm doing Facebook Live until we're released from our captivity here. So you can go back and on my personal page and on my art studio page and see other videos on other subjects. All right, down in here, there's also some brownish yellow. So let's just rough that in quick. I really, right now, I'm baking the cake. I'm getting everything established so that I can do the fun stuff. But I do still want to be aware that I'm working with values, like I'm working with lights and darks, because if I don't have the lights and darks to start out with, no matter how many pretty feathers I put on here, it's not going to be, I'm not going to have dimension, so it's going to be flat, and I don't want to have a flat rooster. Right in here, this is where I've allocated where my very lightest highlights go. There's blue in the wing right here, so I'm going to start those colors. This area, those feathers are catching the light, but underneath them, it's relatively reddish. So I'm going to put a lighter red here, and I just transparent red with a little yellow ochre. And I am going, when I'm applying the paint, I'm thinking about the brush direction, about the feather direction. So I'm already trying to establish where those feathers go. Because accidentally, you might pull in something from your darker to your lighter, like right here. So that happy accident, I'm going to leave that alone. I may change it later, but right now, I'm just going to go with it. Okay, let's put in some blues here because that will make it a lot more interesting. So I am actually going to take my phthalo blue, mix a little bit of ultramarine into it because I don't know that I want it super greenish, but the phthalo blue is a little bit more green than the ultramarine blue. And I'm going straight into this area. That's where those feathers go, the bluish feathers. Up in here are also bluish feathers that are lighter. I think I'm going to go with just ultramarine blue in there. So let me wipe some of this out on my brush. I don't clean my brush between colors, but I do wipe as much as I can on the paper towel. And I try to grab the metal ferrule and then pull straight out. Hi. Hi. Oh, I have 2 Ks. Hi to both Ks. Yeah, thank you, Becky. Yeah, he already looks like, it already looks like feathers, and that's just because I'm wiggling back and forth with my brush. So that's how I'm getting that effect. If you didn't get it that way to start with, because I don't have fear, you know, I've done enough of these that it doesn't scare me. But if you are tentative about it, and you know, you're trying, every stroke is very deliberate, it's going to be stiffer. So try not to care. I know that's hard when you've invested your time in, you know, canvas. But you know what? You can wipe it off if you don't like it. It's not that big a deal, says the person who, you know, easy for me to say, right? Okay, so I'm going to get some ultramarine blue and a little bit of white in here for these feathers. Actually, it's not for the feathers, it's for the base for those feathers. I can exaggerate this because roosters come in all different colors, and let me add a little there. So you'll see that I didn't fill in this white area because as I was painting, I keep looking at my photograph. I wish there was a good place for you to see everything at once, but I haven't quite figured that out yet. So I want to keep looking at my shapes because I didn't happen to get it correctly when I blocked this part in. So I'm just going to go back with some ultramarine blue and transparent red and just fill in those browner feathers that live right there. And then I didn't get this quite large enough, so I'm going to come back in and get that little yellow, those yellow feathers at the end of the wing, a little bit darker. And then right in here, there's a dark value, so I'll go back and put more dark in there. Okay, so I want to, hi Deb, hi Susan. Yes, Sherry, it's a filbert brush, but I started off with a flat. Does it matter? I don't think it really matters. It's more about your the pressure, and I'll show you that when we actually pull the lighter feathers. It's about the pressure and the angle of the stroke. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm filling in the areas in the approximate color. When I started, if you're just joining me now, when I started off, you can go back and you know, actually look at the video if you want to, but when I started, I just looked for these dark shapes and I filled in the dark shapes. Yes, there's a little bit of light area in here. I don't care. I'm just making it all dark because it's predominantly a dark area. This is predominantly a dark area. And it doesn't matter if I'm painting trees or, you know, apples or whatever. I'm going to think about it the same way. I'm looking for the shapes and I'm looking for the value. So, so I started off just basing this in dark and then left an area for my lights where I knew my light values were going to go. And then the rest is medium. So I'm trying to really simplify what I have to think about. So I'm up here now in his neck and I'm going to go with yellow ochre and a little bit of transparent red oxide. I'm trying to think about the direction of the stroke while I'm up here and the color too. So I'm going to, because it makes it a lot faster if I try to think about all of those things at the same time. And you know what? When you're starting out, you can't think about all of that at the same time. It's just overwhelming. So don't worry about that. Just do a little piece at a time. The value's more important than anything else. So get the darks in, get a medium value in, and then either leave space for the lights or you can get those in. I want to put the eye in right now because that's going to help me. Sorry, I'm trying to think about. It's his eye is really golden. So I'm not sure if I'm going to put it in dark. It's going to be hard to get that gold look if I put it in dark. So let me get the color around the eye and then I'll put his pupil in. So that's the color around his eye, and then it gets more reddish as we start into the face. But it looks really goofy right now, so don't worry about that. It's going to look goofy for a little while. What I want to make sure I'm doing is when I look at this photograph, do you see where the eye is positioned on the head? So if I divide that head in half, the eye is on the back half of that line, right? So halfway and then right behind that line, that's where I'm putting my color down. That's really important. It's really important that you get the relationship correct between the beak and the eye in the back of the head. After that, you know, you can mess up down here, nobody's going to care. But if you get his eye in the wrong spot, it's just not going to look right, no matter what else you do correctly. So that's a more important area to concentrate on. So I'll go a little bit slower when I get up here. So also, all right, so the beak comes into the head, and I'm just using yellow, ochre, and white to establish it, and then I'll highlight and shade it. And it comes out a little bit. So again, I'll look here. If I drew a line from the edge of his head, if I draw this line here from the edge of his head and intersect the beak, about half the beak is on the outside and half the beak is on the inside part of the head. So I didn't really worry so much about the shape yet. I know it's a triangle. I want to think though about, is the angle correct? So angle, angle. And then there's a little bit of beak that's showing right there. The color's not quite right, but I'm a little bit darker. That's okay. This way the highlights will show. And then this extra brown stuff, that's going to get cut out when I put the background in. All right, then it's really quite orangey around the around his face. I'm going to ignore the red, the wattle and the comb, but the rest of this. And all I've used right now for these colors is my transparent red oxide with yellow ochre, and I varied the amounts so that it could get a little more orangey. It's darker right up here. But let me get the color in first, and then I will go ahead and. I don't want to go right up to the eye because then I'll lose you won't be able to see what I'm doing. So right in front of the eye, it's a little bit darker. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of more of the transparent red. Let me get that in so that you can see it. And I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit. I'm make it a little bit darker than I see it for two reasons. One is because it's more dramatic and more, you'll catch your viewer's eye a little bit more. But the other reason is that I might lose that when I go to put the other colors on top of it. All right, there's also a little bit of dark behind his eye. So this way I can sneak up on this. I don't have to get the perfect circle, or it's not even a circle, it's more sort of an oval, right away. I don't have to worry about that. I'm trying to take as much stress out of this for myself and for you as I can. So if I don't worry about whether that circle is perfect, I can sneak up on it with the dark value that's behind it and in front of it and change the shape. And there's a little bit, it goes a little bit above also. I don't want to outline it because it's not outlined in the picture. Hi, Chris from Birmingham, Alabama. Hi, Kathy from Watertown, New York. Awesome. So, hope you like, well, obviously you like roosters or you wouldn't be watching, but they're one of my favorite things to paint. I went to look back at the last one I did, and it was quite a while ago. So, I'm excited about painting these guys again. I like to take my own photographs for the roosters because you really want to have nice, a day when there's a lot of nice sunlight so that you can get that dramatic light and dark. It's a lot easier to paint, and then the light hitting those colors, it makes the colors so much more vibrant. So a sunny day's best. Okay, I'm going to fill this comb in with red, just straight out of the tube. It's cad red. I'm just getting the shape. I will go back in and add some dark values in there. It's fun when you can get, well, I love this color. Sorry, I'm going to calm down a little bit. And then there's this dark red. It's darker under here. I'll show you how to get it darker. And then it's lighter. But I'm just going to fill in the areas that are red. And this part's so much fun. I was telling you, if you just joined, I was saying that I normally mix my colors before I start, and I have, I'm rather methodical about it. But when I'm painting roosters, I just go with the color right out of the tube. Because the colors are so intense. Now I'm slowing down here and looking at my photograph because I want to make sure that I get the shape correct here, and when I first put it in it wasn't quite accurate. So right below his eye, and I'm going to keep going back to those benchmarks. I'm going to see, okay, if I drop a line right below his eye or right at the edge of his eye, how far out do these little things come? Oops, got dark paint on there. Go back into my red, and there's a little highlight at the edge of it, so all right, there we go. So far so good. Hi Donna, nice that you could join me. So again, if you just joined, my name is Lena Ferrara. I am an artist in Central Pennsylvania. I like painting everything. Unfortunately, I paint still life, and I paint animals, and I paint birds. And, if you'd like to see more of my work, or if you're just curious to know more about me, you can go over to my website, www.lena-ferrara.com. And I've put a blog post up about my 5 best tips for painting ravishing roosters. So you can go ahead, head over there after we're done here and check that out if you want. All right, so I have the area around the eye. Now I want to put the pupil in. Once you get the pupil in, then he starts to come to life. And I want to use the darkest color I can get. So ultramarine blue and transparent red will make a nice black. If I lean it a little on the bluer side, I get a darker color. Let me just get the center of his eye. It's a nice dark pupil. And he's got a small eye, so you can see that fairly well, I think. But I don't want to get it too big, then it'll look like he's... when you make your pupil too large, he looks a little scary. When you make it too small, he looks really mean. So I put it in there. I can always narrow things down with the paint that's around it, but just for now, I'm going to. That seems pretty accurate if I look at my photograph. Okay, the eye needs a highlight. So I like to put the eye in at this stage, get it fairly well finished, and then move on. Because if you get the eye right, the rest, you can get some feathers off and it won't matter. That color, I'm going to pick up a little cad yellow, which is a nice bright yellow, a little bit of white, and I already have that yellow ochre on there. So just want to very lightly. My poor liner brush has got a bend in it. I don't know if you can see it because I didn't take good care of it, but don't do that. So now I sort of have to figure out how I can place it so that I get what I want. And I can't. So let me go to a different brush. So what happened was I left it in my I didn't wash, excuse me for my reach. I didn't clean it right away, and I left it in soaking in Murphy's oil soap, which is what I used to clean my brushes. And it bent the tip, so shame on me. New brush, yellow ochre and white. I'm sorry, cad yellow and white. And I'm going to put, there's a light area, a light yellow area right above that pupil, and I want to get that in there. Okay, you can, that shows up pretty well. I am using titanium white, Becky. Zinc white is more transparent, and it will also, it's not quite as archival. You really have to be careful and look to see, some whites will yellow, and titanium is just a good overall white. If there's a special reason that I want to use zinc, maybe in flowers, but I don't even know if I own zinc white, to be honest with you. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm using titanium. Okay, so that's that highlight around the eye, but there's also a little highlight in the pupil, and I'm just going to go with straight white, which probably the only time I use straight white. And I have to think about where that sunlight's coming from. It's coming from the upper, let me show you on the photo, coming from this way. Now, because you're seeing this backwards, because it's on, so that I can watch the comments. So this is where the highlight's coming from. So upper part of that eye, I'm just going to put a little dot of white. A small dot. If you put a big dot of white, he's going to look like he has cataracts. And this is a teeny tiny eye, so I'm probably not going to do too much more to it, but I do want to put just the slightest bit of like a sea of light blue on the other side. That helps give that eye a little bit more dimension and sparkle. One of these times we can do, if you're interested, I can just do a face for you where, you know, then I can spend more time on the eye. And if you lost the black, then you can just go back and put that in. Now he looks a little bit like he has blue eyes. So I gotta get back in here a little bit closer and see if I can get that. There we go. Get that black to stick. All right, there's a little bit of an eye ring around the eye, and some birds it's light and some birds it's dark, and it's super hard to tell from my photograph, but I think I'm going to make it dark. I'm going to make it dark just because that's what's going to show up against the rest of his face. And at this point I can shape that eye and, you know, make sure I have it a little bit more accurate. There we go. So his eye's now really quite prominent. It's not going to stay that prominent. There's a lot of red around his eye and coming right up to it, so I'm going to go back to the brush that had the red on it. And it's just Cad Red medium, straight, because it's going to mix in with the colors that I already have in here. And there's some, oops, see that big glob of white? How did I pick that up? Some roosters have a lot of wrinkles in that fleshy part, or that comb and wattle part, and some don't. So you really have to take a look at the rooster that you're painting to see what's where. And then some of them have really huge combs, and some have little itty bitty ones. So if you find a photo and you like the comb on one rooster, then just add it. Nobody's going to know. Okay, I want to put a little more dimension in those red areas. So I'm going to need a light area and a dark. This is basically my medium value. So to darken that, I want to use a smaller brush. So still I'm using a filbert, and I'm using a synthetic filbert, meaning it's not a natural hairbrush. It has a little bit more spring. It stays together well. I can get more detail because the edges aren't splayed out. So as opposed to this is a hog hairbrush, and you can, I don't know if you can see this or not. My bristles, see how one is very fine and the other's like puffier? So I don't want to use that when I want detail, but this is good for, you know, just basically putting the bird in. Okay, so as I was saying, let me get my darker areas. So I'm going to use alizarin crimson and just a little bit of blue. And I'm looking for the darks. So right on the front edge, since the light's coming from above his head, it makes sense that dark value is going to be on the lower part opposite the light. And I'm getting paint in my background, but that doesn't, I don't care, because I can paint over that. So I'm exaggerating it from the photo. And I'm placing the dark area in. I'm not blending it. I'll blend it later, but I want to make sure that I keep those nice darks right in here above his nose. There's some real nice dark. And then within this area, that comb has, nooks and crannies is the best way I can describe it. And again, all those, they're not uniform from rooster to rooster or chicken to chicken. There's some in this lower part here. There's an ear covering here, which I didn't get in. Let's put that in. And it's that color changes depending on the breed of chicken, I suppose, or individuals. And right in here is some dark. So I would spend more time, looking at this part, seeing where exactly those dark values are. And again, you're just putting shapes in. So, okay, this shape looks like a triangle and then it curves down. That's how I talk to myself when I'm doing it. And then there's a shape here. And if I don't get it correct, or if I don't get it exactly right, it's not that big a deal. So those darks are in. And now I can come back, wipe my brush, and I'm just going to soften some of them. So I'm going to look, sometimes those little grooves, like it's almost like a cave, right? So the edge of the cave might be light, and then on some areas it's more like just a roll. So on those rolled areas, then I want to blend between so that I get a softer transition. I hope that makes sense to you. If it doesn't make sense, oh, good, Judy can see it. So some of those areas I'm going to soften, and some of them I'm not. And I just look at my photo to decide. Whoops, I got rid of that by accident. Very light touch I'm using when I'm blending. All right, so now I want to go and put a highlight there so that you can see what that looks like. And I'm looking at the photograph, and sorry for the glare. There we go. And I'm looking for those light areas, those light shapes, and that's what I'm going to put in next. There's a temptation to go straight to white when you lighten, and that's really going to give me a very chalky, dead-looking highlight. So I always add a little bit of yellow. If you have Naples yellow, that would be great. It's to use instead of white. But I didn't put Naples yellow out today. So I have a little bit of my cad yellow in my white, very little. Like, it's almost the color of butter, not margarine, because margarine's, got that artificial color. It's more like butter. So I'm going to pick out a few areas right in here. It looks white right now, even though it isn't, but when I blend it in, I'm just placing the light values first, and then I'll blend them later. The outside edge of this section is light, and the reason that I place it and then blend it later, it's almost like you're doing you're thinking two different ways. I want to put everything. I'm going to put everything in there, and I won't contaminate my brush. And then I can go back and blend and wipe. Now I'm really thinking about, okay, where is that area? And I don't want my highlight to touch my dark area. I want it to be in the middle of the medium value, because that'll keep my color cleaner. Where else is there light? Right up here in the top. And then sometimes you may just put some because it, the painting directs you to it, or you need to because there's nothing going on in a certain area. Like here, I don't know that there's actually something there, but it feels like it needs something there because I have a big area that's all one value. I'm going to be careful about not getting that light too far down into where my darker values are, because that's going to distort my shape if I do that. Alright, so now I have those placed. Now I can go back and just barely tickle the edges in. So when I say that, I have a really light pressure on my brush and barely touching into the edge. so easy to get rid of it. So if I did, then I'd just go back and I would put it back in. So the worst thing can happen is that you have to wipe it off and start over again. Okay, let me highlight that beak a little bit. Oh, he already looks really kind of cocky, doesn't he? I think he's got an attitude. Okay, that there's light, and I'm using that same yellow ochre, cad yellow and white. I'm going to put that highlight right here. That's where I see it on the photo. And you can see this photo. It's on my blog post at lena-ferrara.com in case you want to use that for, to paint a rooster yourself. You can go back and watch the video again and you can see how I started it. Okay, then there's a really nice bright yellow here. Just straight cad yellow. I'm just laying it on top. And I don't see, sometimes you'll see a little line between, how's the sound? Because I forgot to put my mic on. Just type in if you can hear me. Sorry about that. Yeah, he's on a mission. He is. And that comes from the directional lines. So if you see, when I first started, I took I really analyzed the photo for you, so you can go back and see that. But the direction from his front foot, or rather the back foot, and his head, I really want to make sure I have that angle right, and I want to have these other angles, so really pay attention to the angles, and that's what gives you that. He's got an attitude. Oh, sound is better. Thanks, Sharon. Sorry about that. Yeah, I forgot. Every time I do this, I learn something. I think I've got it all right, and then... Okay, I did notice, just looking back and forth from the photo to my painting, that I don't have his neck is a little straight. So I'm just going to curve this out. That's better. I'm going to curve that out a little bit. And I just picked up some transparent red to do that. It's a darker value than what was on there. Let's see. What else do I want to get? Oh, so I was saying sometimes there's a little bit of a line between the upper and the lower beak. I don't really see it on this one, so I'm probably not going to put it on. It's any small. So I do have a transition area here that I want to fix. Whoops. So I just gave him a line. Just blend that out, just the hair, just to get rid of it. Okay, so now's the fun part, okay? You thought this was fun. I'm going to put some of these feathers on. So I'm going to use my filbert brush. It's a smaller brush because I'm in an area of his head that's smaller. It's about a 6, I would say, size 6. And I'm going to get some of these lighter feathers around his head. So I'm going to go into straight color, meaning I'm not mixing it with anything because it's going to mix with what I have already placed. So I'm going to get, oh, thanks, Kathy. Yeah, the sound is better now because I happened to look over and see my microphone sitting on the table. Okay, so yellow ochre and, I'm sorry, I keep calling it yellow ochre. It's yellow, cad yellow and cad red. Actually, I'm going to strike that. I'm going to use some cad orange because I want this to be really nice and bright. So cad yellow and cad orange. And I'm going to start here. Now is where it's important that you get the direction right and your stroke right. So I want to slow down so you can see this. Thinking about, okay, the feathers are from the top of his head. They're curving around over the top of his head. They go straight as they come down the side of the neck. And this length of them is important too. So the length of my stroke is going to give me the length of the feather. up around his head, the feather strokes are shorter because the feathers are shorter. When we get to the tail, we're going to take really nice sweeping strokes out. So I'm starting in a place where it's not as crucial also, especially when you start to get that rhythm going. So up here, it's easy to pull short strokes. Maybe that's too red. Let's get a little bit more yellow in it. I'm just going to pull. Now, if I get it too jaggedy looking, he's going to look like he had a really bad hair day. So then I'll just smooth out the stroke. I don't want to keep playing in there because if I do, I'm going to get one value. I'm going to lose my dark that I put on to start with. So as I go down his neck, his feathers are a little bit more orangey. So I'm going to add a little bit more orange to my color, to the color on my brush. And I'm just going to put in a few strokes here. I'll slow it down so that you can get the idea. So I'm putting the stroke down and then just leaving it alone. I don't want to go back into it. If I go back into it, I'm blending it and it's going to go away. So what if I have something down here that I don't like? Then I can come back in with the dark value. So I'm sure that'll happen when we get around here somewhere. So I'll be able to show you what happens then. All right, as I change areas, like this is really quite orangey, so I'm going to pick up some more orange and just start adding it. I'm skipping spaces. I'm not putting it, solid. And then it gets darker down here, so a little orange with my transparent red will give me a nice darker orange in here. So it's sort of like almost like a zigzag motion. And my brush isn't always hitting the surface because if I'm not sure where I want the feather to be, then I'm going to be a little bit more tentative until I get that stroke down, where it's almost like a practice stroke in my mind. And then I'm hitting it, and sometimes I hit and it misses too, so I don't worry about that. I can either go back or just leave it alone and decide later. And this, I may get him all done in one sitting, or I may decide I need to come back and reinforce areas. So I rarely ever finish anything right away, which brings me to a question that I would like to ask you guys about. Would you be interested in seeing me just finish a painting, like maybe one that I started on another Facebook Live and then had a few days to rest and I get to think about it, and then I like to go back and do some touches? Would that be something that you'd be interested in? Just type in if you'd want to see that, or if you want to see something else, you'd like to see me paint, I don't know, pineapples, or shouldn't have said that because I don't want to paint pineapples, but I'm open. I'll learn something too. Yeah, so now it's a very light touch, and I'm actually just going back in here. In the dark value, I don't want to put a light color because that's going to distort my shape. So I'm just using what I already have on my brush, or I can come back in and put more darks. But if I add something in here, it's going to be a darker brown, or maybe a little alizarin crimson. I don't actually see the alizarin crimson, but I like that color and I feel like putting it in there, so I can. I haven't really gone back into my oil either, if you noticed. I put the oil on when I first started as I was putting color in, but then I don't want to put more in because that's just going to make my paint transparent and more slippery. So as I'm putting these on, I'm picking up a little paint, I'm moving a little paint around, but the direction is giving you the effect that it's feathers. Okay, that would be good. Pigs would be fine. All right, I could paint pigs. I'd probably just paint one little baby pig for you. Yeah, you know, I always thought that too about getting the finish on something. You know, you get to a point where you think you know what you're doing, and then that very last, am I doing too much or not enough? I'm not going to get the feather strokes on the edge of the head yet because I want to get some background in around him before I do that. So down in here, the feather color changes a little bit. It's a little bit more yellow. So it's a little more yellow oak, looks like yellow ochre. I think I'm going to add a little cad yellow to my yellow ochre so that it brightens it up a little bit. Right in this area, there's some more. So was this a little easier than you thought it was going to be? I know that people think about, when they think about painting something with all these feathers, they get a little paralyzed. It's really not as hard as you know you think it is. Right in here in this winter, oh my god, in this wing area, the color changes, and I'm going to switch to a bigger brush too because the feathers are bigger, and it'll help me get more done and a little bit faster. The direction changes and the length of the stroke is going to change because that's not showing up. So I'm going to pick up a little bit, or at least it's not showing enough. I'm going to pick up a little bit of cad red with my yellow, no, sorry, cad red and transparent red. I'm having a hard time with my colors today. That's a dark area. I'm going to leave that dark. And this is a little exaggerated, but because it's not quite as red as I'm putting it in. But I like it, so that's what's gonna stay. So right in here, this is more of a yellow. Now I'm gonna go to my yellow ochre and cad red. Oh gosh, yellow ochre and cad yellow. Sorry, I apologize. Right in here, it's a quite kind of a long stroke, because it's a big fat feather, and it's just the top of it that's a little bit lighter. So I'm going to add a little bit of white with my cad yellow. Just get the top part of that feather lighter, and I'm just blending by I place the color, then I'm blending it, I'm going over it, but very gently so that I don't lose that color, since I have color under it. There's a little bit of an orangey tone here too, so I'm going to pick up a little transparent red. I still haven't really cleaned my brush out. I'm just wiping it. Here, that makes it a little prettier. And then there's a second feather here, so there's quite a bit of a division line there. I don't want to mess up that brush, so I'm going to take my other smaller brush and just get a dark value in here. My dark was transparent red and ultramarine blue, and I'm going to put a dividing line between those two feathers so you can actually see that there's two sets of feathers. These blue feathers overlap that, so that's why I started down here and I'm moving up. So I'm not going to worry about the upper shape yet because I'll get that when I come back and put my blue feathers on there. And then let me look down in here before I switch colors. This area is the feathers are like short and fluffy, so I think I want to darken that up a little bit before I go any further. So I'm going to take some transparent red oxide and just add a little bit of darkness there. That's probably enough. And then I can come in with yellow ochre. My yellow ochre is a little sticky, so I'm picking because it's sat out for a week, or it sat on my palette for a week. Let me try it. Nope, doesn't show up enough, so I'm going to pick up a little yellow, cad yellow with that. Still on my brush, and my brush is like loaded with paint. And when I say I pick it up, let's see if you can see. See how there's all those different colors on there? I'm not worrying so much about I'm not worrying about mixing it to a nice even color. Nancy, I am using a filbert. It's a synthetic filbert. I don't know the name, or the name wore off this brush, but if you look at Silver Brush Ruby Satin series. That's the type of hair. It's synthetic and it's got a lot of spring to it. And no, I don't work for them, so. But I love that. I love those brushes. I love a lot of brushes, but I like those a lot. Okay, so I put some little short feathers in here on top of the color I just started when I had darkened it. I don't want to do a lot. I'm just going to put a few. Down in this area, I'm probably not quite dark enough, so I'll go back in and I'll show you what to do in that instance. And I'm going to switch brushes now. Now I'm going to have a light brush and a dark brush because it will make it easier for me. I want to put the dark in behind it. So let me pick up a little bit of, going to mix transparent red, a little alizarin crimson, and just a little bit of blue to make it darker. So alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue will make a purple, and then the transparent red will make it a little bit more orangey. But right in this area where it looks pretty uniform, I want to make sure I get some darks in there. So when I think about putting the dark in, I'm thinking, okay, this feather is on top, so let me get behind that feather or underneath that feather. And you're not going to see a huge value change back here. It's not going to pop out for you because it's in a darker area and I don't want it to pop out. If I create feathers back here and I make them all pop out as much as these up here pop out, I'm going to flatten my rooster. My rooster's not going to have any form. So anything I put in this dark area is going to be pretty dark. And you won't really get the beauty of it until you see it up close. I'm not sure, this looks fine, but I don't know if I want to change this, but I'll think about that and do it with the background. All right, let's get these bluer feathers up in here. So I'm going to use a smaller brush. I'm going to wipe it out because I just put all kinds of colors in here. It was going to be my dark brush, but that's my ideal. You know, I have a light brush and a dark brush, and that never happens. I want to get some beautiful highlights. So I have, in this section, when I started off, I put a little bit of phthalo blue in. This section has ultramarine blue, just so that I get variety. Now, when I get to the light, I'm going to just pick up a little bit of white because I have color under there, and it's not going to look white when I get done. I'm going to show you the photograph again. So again, if you just joined me, this photograph is on my blog post. It's my 5 best tips to get paint ravishing roosters. And my blog post is on my website, lena-ferrara.com. Okay, so look in here. They look white, but we're going to add a light blue there so that we get those feathers. But I want you to look at, see how short these feathers are and see how much longer they are here. I just really want to pay attention to that. Okay, Sharon wants to know the name of the filberts again. They are, if you look, go to, they're called Ruby Satin, and they're made by Silver Brush Company. I'll put a link in the comment section when I'm done. And if you have other questions like what colors am I using, I wrote down the colors over on the blog post, but I can also put them in the comments. Okay, so these are little round feathers down here. So I'm just going to, the shape, I'm just going to do like a C motion. And I'm being a very light touch, and also I'm not going back over it. I'm going to try to be as irregular with my brush strokes as possible so I don't set up a pattern. So sometimes, in order to do that, I may not hit the canvas every time. Because sometimes when you're, I don't know about you, but when I paint, I have to fight that, you know, setting that pattern up. So one of the tricks I've evolved is I'll put a stroke down, and then I'll put the next stroke to it up in the air, and then this way the one that's up in the air was probably going to be the mirror stroke, and then the third one, you know, should be okay. And the other thing is, if you go faster, then you will have less, it'll be less likely that you set up a pattern. I know you can't always do it that way. You can't always do everything fast, but just try it, and if it doesn't work, our friend is a paper towel with turpentine on it. Okay, I have these other feathers here that are a little bit longer. So, and the light seems to be more on the bottom side of it. I'm going to pick up white because underneath here I have ultramarine blue, so that's going to give me a different type of blue than I have over here. And that whole feather looks light. Then there's a feather right above it. Now you see my stroke is much longer. I have to keep wiping because I have paint underneath this section. And when I'm putting the white on, it's blending in, which is a good thing. Okay. Now I'll come back and finesse the edge a little bit. So fix the shape. You want to make sure that in this area that you have overlap, because you know these feathers, the top feathers are laying on top of the bottom feathers. So if there's an area where you don't see the overlap, like right here, that blue should be overlapping this feather a little bit more. So I'm going to come back in with a little bit more color on my brush, white on my brush, and just make sure that I get that feather to overlap. And if I take more than 2 or 3 strokes, it may disappear. So be patient with yourself. 1, 2. All right. I like how that's turning out. Sherry, you would like to see a grisaille. No volume. Okay, I must have moved my microphone. Sorry. Okay, we could do that one time. All right, so I have this area here where it needs to come together a little bit more, this saddle area. So I'm just going to take my big brush because it's not an important where I see feather strokes. Oh, actually, I made feather strokes by accident. I used this brush because it has a lot of dark on it. And it's just a regular hog's hair. And then, okay, so I'm going to look at the transition areas. Like right in here, it looks like I have a lot of feathers done, but that's really just for my initial coat of paint. I sort of like it. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to add anything there. It's still dark, but there's variation. It looks like feathers. I think I said that when we started that, sometimes you'll get stuff by accident and then you can just leave it there. But if you go back over it and over it and over it again, you're not going to get those accidents because, everything will, you don't have to cover everything. I did paint this background first in a color, and I painted it in yellow just because yellow is a nice happy color. Some people tone it in an earth tone, which is, perfectly fine. It depends on, excuse me, for me, I just like to have the happy color under it. That's the only reason. Okay, Judy has not lost her volume. All right, so Sherry, maybe it's you. So make sure you have turned off any other things that you might be streaming or other on your device, and that will help with the volume, and it'll help not losing, the delay. All right, so I'm going to look here now at the transition areas between areas of his body. This looks like he's got one of those, whatever the Southern ladies used to, a bustle right here. So I don't want that. It's a lot smoother than that. So I'm going to just take some of my dark and drag it up over that area, and let's get rid of that bustle effect. There we go. See how easy that was to do? Okay, this is the part now that's really fun and freaks people out. So when I started this area, this is the tail, and if you just joined me or if you didn't see the beginning part of it, I put in a lot of different colors in here, all dark values. I put in some phthalo blue, some phthalo green, a little bit of a violet color. You know, Diax purple would have been perfect, but I forgot to squeeze it out. So I have alizarin crimson with some ultramarine blue. And this is probably the only time you can get away with all these intense colors is when you're painting feathers, roosters or peacocks or something. I don't know what's this, something weird happened there. Okay, so now this part's important. I'm going to go back to my filbert brush, my bigger filbert, which is about an 8. I was using a 6, and maybe it's a 10. It's a little bit bigger. And I'm going to think about, let me show you the photo again. Let's talk about it. Okay, so whoops, sorry for the glare. All right, so just look at the tail. You're seeing a little bit of highlight in there, and then the rest of the tail is kind of just raggedy edges, really, right? But those few feathers that you can actually see are important. So the tail feathers are very long, and let me just draw something back here in a color that I will be able to get rid of. Okay, so think about, there's a spine. It's almost like a leaf. Okay, so it has a vein. Think about it that way. And if I'm seeing the side of the feather, then that's all I'm seeing is, if you're seeing the edge, it's very narrow. But if you're seeing the feather full on, then you're going to see, let me draw the outline of it. You're going to see both sides if it's flat. And then you're going to see little spines that go out that way. And it, again, like a leaf, if you look at a vein line. Actually, it'd be great if you looked at a feather, you know. I have to find some friends who have chickens close to me. I had a great place to go when I lived up in Lewisburg, but I need to find chicken friends. So if anybody's near Carlisle and you have chickens and you happen to be watching, or if you have a friend, and when this is all over, I'd like to go visit them. I'm going to your house, Becky, so you know you're not going to be able to stop me. Becky has pheasants, and you have chickens too. Okay, hi Lori, it's nice that you could join us. If you're wondering what we're doing, we're painting roosters, and if you want more information, you can go ahead and look at my blog post on my website. I've written a little article about how my 5 best tips for painting roosters. Lena-Ferrara.com. Okay, so we're back here in the tail, and this is what the feather would look like head on, right? So not all the feathers are going to be facing front. You're going to see the edge of a lot of feathers. So if I look at my photograph or my rooster, wherever I see it, in this particular photograph, I have a really beautiful feather that's head on, and then I have one under it that's sort of, so I'll do that one first. And I really want to pay attention to where it's sitting in this array of feathers. So I'm going to get a light value on my brush. I'm going to get some white and a little bit of my phthalo turquoise because I love that color. And I'm going to draw that center vein line or the spine of the feather. So I'm going to think about the feathers are originating here at the base of the tail, right? So they have to have a point of origination. I can't just throw a feather anywhere, because I'm not going to have the, feel that it's all connected to the rooster. So that's something that would be good to look at. But then after they come out, sometimes they just flop over and, twist and turn. So I'm really want to watch that. Now, I don't want this whole thing to show. This is the center line of my feather. So I may lose it here and there. But I'll put the whole thing in for you to see. Okay, so that's the center vein line like I have drawn up there. Then the edges of the feather, in order for them to show up against the background, I'm going to pick up a little bit of my phthalo turquoise and white, or what, you could just use white because you have color under it. I'm going to go on the edge of this and pull in towards my center spine. So I'm at the edge of the feather and I'm pulling in. And as I have to make sure it's not that wide. Hold on, let me get rid of that. Okay, so you want to also look at the width of the feather before you get too excited and start pulling color. So I'm going to place my brush down and then I'm pulling and lifting. So it's almost like when an airplane takes off the runway. So I'm placing it. Now this is a conscious, I'm not going super fast for this. So pull and lift. And you'll get little streaks by accident. So, and I don't have to reload every time, because if I don't reload, then my color will get darker. Sometimes you'll lose the color, which is also nice. So that if I outline this whole thing with the light paint, it's just going to look too stiff and unnatural. So having it disappear every now and then is a good thing. So as I'm coming across the curve, I'm also twisting, because think about it, those spines are going in at an angle on both sides of the feather. So also on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to pull on in toward the edge. Every once in a while I may have to reload my brush, but if I look at the photograph, I'm exaggerating this feather for you guys, but when I look at the photograph, there's only a little area that's showing, right? Hi Barbara, hi Tammy, and hi Avis. If you just joined me, we're painting rooster feathers. You got here for the best part, which is the tail feathers. But if you want to see more, you can always watch the replay. And I did write some tips on my blog post about painting roosters. So that's over on my website at www.lena-barra.com, and I'll just put that in my in the comments at the end so that I don't keep saying it. Okay, so there's another little feather here that shows up part of one, and I'll draw the vein for you because that makes it easier. But at this point, then having painted a lot of them, then I don't have to think about it anymore. So I said I'd draw the vein in, and then I forgot. I'm going to take a little bit of white. I would not normally do this, but I'm doing this so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so that's the center vein line of that feather. And then I can just pull from the edge in towards it at an angle. I don't want to reload my brush every time because this way I'll get more of a variety in here. I know it's a little hard to see because I'm in a dark area, and I will highlight that again. Okay, then there's one more little feather that's showing here that's very distinct that I'll do this whole process again. Okay, but you're not seeing the entire feather, you're just seeing part of it. So I'm paying attention to this direction. So all of the feathers are originating from this one point, or on the base of his tail. And they're all coming out like this, right? Some of them curve more, some of them curve less, but they're all coming out like this. Then when they come out, they might flop over, they might go out straight. So that's something you need to actually look at your photograph to see. Like these out here, why don't I just draw them for you? And then I can get rid of it. The feathers out here are coming up like that. Then as they come from, they're actually longer and they're starting to curve over. So again, I have my center point. It's sort of like when we were painting daffodils last week, you have a growth direction. You can think about that with the rooster tail also. So it's coming out here, and I'm just skipping that area because I don't want to mess up the feather that I did. And down in here, I'm not sure, some of them are flopping over, some of them are just coming out from the base. Okay, so they have a direction. This one looks a little straighter down here. And then from here, now I can highlight. I would never highlight every one of these feathers because that's just going to give you, you're going to lose dimension. So this feather that's in front here, that's what I'm gonna concentrate on. And what's going to happen when you do that is that it's going to look like you have, worried about all those feathers, when in reality you've only painted one or two. So these now, I might highlight the tips of those feathers where they go against the background, and I'll only do one to show you, but I want to put the background in before I get any more in. Because I don't want this to be nice and straight. There's ins and outs here that are very pretty and that help with my effect of the long flowing feathers. So I want to do that next before I paint any edges. And I haven't quite decided if this bird is going to be in the grass or if it's just going to have a background of color. I should have decided that to begin with. But let me give you I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So in this painting, I did a background that was grass, so that those chickens are sitting in the grass. And that's nice, I might do that. I don't know. I'll decide within the next 5 minutes. But even though I gave them a bit grassy background, if you look really close at that grass, it's barely painted, right? I paint on it, but they're not grass strokes. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Lisa. And now the other option I have is to give it more of a portrait background, like this painting. So I just have color back there that doesn't really represent anything. I'm sort of leaning toward this background. Actually, I guess I'll let you decide. Would you rather have the portrait background like that or the grass background? What would you rather see me do? It's going to be the first few people who answer. So type in, would you rather have see a portrait background like that? Or would you rather me show you how to paint the chicken in the grass, a rooster in the grass? And then once I get, okay, Nancy would like grass. So that's what we're going to, okay, most of you want to see grass. Okay. Going back to my big brush. I'm not going to fill in I probably won't fill in the whole canvas, but I will just put in the important parts around it. So, everybody wants grass. Okay. I want to consider now, how am I going to get dimension back here? If I'm doing a grassy background, I still need to think about a sense of distance. So what do I do with the feet if I do the portrait? I would have to paint the feet, Sharon. I can hide them in the grass. So then what I would do is get a really good picture of feet, because the picture I have isn't showing me what the feet look like. So hiding them in the grass is definitely an option. Chicken feet are really ugly, but it's like anything else. It's like painting a tree branch. We just dissect it into values and shapes. Okay, so in order for me to get a sense of distance here, I'm going to use a tool, a color tool, temperature, intense. I'm going to use intensity, and I'm going to use a little more value contrast. So for something to look far away when you're in a landscape, adding blue to it is really effective, because when you're looking out into the distance, there's all kinds of little water droplets in the air, and the water droplets are interfering with the color that you see. So it's almost like you're looking through water the further distant you go, and obviously depending on how much humidity is in the air, but that's probably more than you want to know. Just remember, if in the distance, in the landscape, bluer or cooler color is going to help give you distance. So you'll see my grass is sort of blue-green back here. And then as I come down the canvas, it switches over to a warmer green, more yellow in the green. Oh, you can't see that. Now you can. So when you see more yellow, that's going to come forward. It's going to look, It's going to give you more sunlight. Also, that color is more intense, and there's more value change, meaning there's light against dark here. And when you look in the background, it's really not a lot of value change. It's pretty much a one value back there. So that's how I'm going to get the effect that he's got grass behind it. So I'm going to start off with a bluer green. So I'm using my big brush because I want to cover ground quickly. And I'm going to just mix a little bit of color here so I don't have to brush mix, because I want this to be duller. When I was in the rooster itself, I didn't really use a lot of mixed color. I just went straight for my tube color. So because having intense color in there was my goal. So let's get some, I have some sap green out here. Sap green is a warmer green. And I think I still have some terra vert out here. Oh, yay! From last week. So I put a little cotton ball with clove oil in my paint palette box. And that helps my paints to stay wet from week to week. And it does not affect the drying time. If I were to mix that color in with the paint, it would affect my drying time. But it's just on a little cotton ball. Okay, so I'm testing my color on the background. That looks a little light to you, but there we go. And this is just terra vert and white. I think I want it a little bit darker than that. So I mixed the color with my palette knife, and then I'm just gonna put it on. And because if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have. I could just. I didn't get it in my brush. I think still darker. Actually, I do put a lot of palette knife in the grass anyway, so I can show you that too. All right, I'm gonna need more terra vert. Well, I will mix ultramarine blue and yellow ochre so I can get a dull bluish green. Needs to be lighter. There we go. All right, I'm just going to paint around the chicken for the sake of time. So I'm going to get most of the color on there with my knife, and then I'll get my brush in there and just go around the feathers. I guess I should put some paint around his head too. So ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, because I want a dull green, more on the bluish side, so proportion wise more ultramarine blue. And then white to lighten it, and white will also tone it down, cool, and make it cool. I'm after a cool color, bluish color back here, and then as I come forward in my grass, I'm going to make it greener. And you know, this is actually similar to what I would do if I was doing a portrait background, where I'd just be adding colors in. I'd start off with some dull color and then add a few lighter values in there. Okay. All right, so that's what I would do back there. And then as I come down, I'm going to get some prettier greens. I could use yellow, cad yellow, and a little bit of phthalo, because that phthalo will, ooh, not going to use that. How about some sap green? And a little yellow ochre to tone it down. I still don't want it to be neon. There we go. See how much warmer? There's a big difference. In between, you want to mix so that you don't have such a huge difference. And I also want it to be a little bit darker down here so that my light, when I put the light grasses in, it'll show up better. So I can mix quite a variety of greens with the yellows and the blues that I have on my palette. So this is how I start this off, you know, just with the palette knife, and then I'll go back in, maybe, we'll see. Go back in with the brush and do a little bit of detail. But it covers the canvas quickly, and I'm not interested in painting, you know, realistic grass. If I were, then I would use a different approach. I want everybody, I want you to look at the rooster. So I want all of my finer brush strokes to be in this area, so that's what you look at. And by finer, I mean more deliberate, more considered. Okay, and then right in between here, I'm going to mix between that bluish green and that yellow green, and get something in between. And then when I go with my brush, I'll get more. But anyway, that's that. Oh, so I really want to paint around my tail so that I can show you how to change, if you need to change any of these. I really want to make sure that I have a nice variety in the shape around the tail. So I'm going to pay attention to my photograph. Here the feathers are quite smooth as they're coming out, but up in here where they're ending, the tail feathers are ending, so they end at different spots. Hi, Jimmy and Lynn Art is here. Nice to see you. We're painting roosters. We're almost at the end. I'm getting some dimension here in the tail, so I'm painting some grass around it so that I can show you how to cut in a little bit if you need to. And then I want to make sure that the feathers are laying on top of the background, so I'll just get some of that in and then go back into the feather and bring it out over. So it's preferable to have some of that background color in around. I'm going to pick up some of this green here too. As I come forward, I want to have the green a little bit warmer and more intense. So having some of that color actually blending into your tail is going to help you show dimension also, because some of those edges are going to get lost. You don't want to have all those edges to be sharp, because it's going to look then like your rooster is pasted on, and we don't want to have, you know, our rooster look like we cut it out and stuck it on the canvas. So don't be afraid to get your color, you know, in. Okay, as I come forward, I can brighten up this green. And I'm overlapping the feet here, but I'll go back in there. So here I want most of my interest. I want to have darks and lights. Back here I want the color to stay a little bit cooler. I don't want it to look like two separate things. So in between here I will, you know, I'll blend between the colors a little bit. All right, but let's just get this in around here so you have something, you can see me finish it. I want to make sure I get all the way up. I don't want to have a halo around it, and I don't want it to look pasted on. So if I overlap, not a biggie, not a big deal. This is another thing people get all freaked out about, because I think it's because you've gotten your shapes, you know, and you think you have everything correct, and then here I say, well, you know, it doesn't matter if you have background color in your overlap it. Let some of the edges get lost. You don't want around the head. You know, I wouldn't want to lose that, but in the tail. And then so this smooths those feathers out, but I do want to have a few wild ones in there. So This part's fun for me. I don't know how you feel about it, but I just like splapping the paint on there. And it doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter. It's not as important as painting the rooster. So further back, I don't want to have too many directional strokes. You know, I am going to have a little bit of this up and down thing, but it's more horizontal. And as I come forward, that's when my strokes can be a little bit more flatter. Not too, I don't want to have high grass right here, so my strokes are going to be shorter. It's similar to when we were painting the rooster feathers. So up here in the head, I had the real short strokes because the feathers were shorter up there. So the same thing with the grass. When you're looking at your neighbor's lawn, you don't see individual grass like you would if you were looking at the grass right around your feet, right? So I'm just getting that in. And I don't want to tell my viewer every single thing. I don't want to bore them to tears. So I'm going to give you the impression that I have grass here. And do you see how fast, how easy that and fast? It's sort of, you know, the same theory with painting the rooster. I don't have to paint every single feather. If I paint a few feathers, you'll think that I painted every single feather. But the further down I go in my grass, the longer my strokes are going to be. I'm not going to paint the bottom part because it's off camera. But here we go. Okay, so now that I have that around, now I can go back in and get some of those feathers out over the background. So I'm going to come and reload my brush in whatever color, whatever the color was in the area. So right in here, yellow ochre and a little bit of transparent red. And then I can just sculpt those feathers. If I give him a lot of loose feathers, he's going to look very fluffy or very angry. So I want to really be careful. You know, I want it to fit with the attitude that I have intended for this rooster. So I don't know that I want him to have too many wild hairs here. And I want to look out for flat spots. Do you see how I flattened that out at one point? So there's a nice curve. I'll make sure I keep that curve. And I'm pulling some of the greens in there from the background. And it helps him to, some areas to recede a little bit. So, especially in the tail. Let's do, I want to cut in here on this part of the rooster. So let me go back into that blue or green. Of course, I've run out of paint. Get that closer in there. Okay, so then I can come in with my brush, and then I'll switch brushes when I get really close. Oh, maybe I don't have to. I want to sharpen up that beak. So you see how you don't have to have the shape perfect that first time around. You can always cut in and change it. And then if I cut in too much, I can go back and put the other color on, the yellows or whatever I need to. Just going to paint right around there, and then I might pull out. I'll look at it and see if I need to make his comb bigger. Okay. I may as well just finish this part too. Hi Maureen, hi Dwayne. Do I teach portraits? No, I do not teach portraits. Nobody's actually asked me. I've done a few. I like doing animals better than people, because if you don't get the animal, I shouldn't say that, because I've done animal portraits for people, and you do have to be accurate when you're doing that, because they'll know it's not their dog. You know, you get a few colors off and it's really not good. But no, the answer is I have not yet. So is that something you'd like to see also? Just type in if you want what else you would like to see me paint. Okay, so here in this part of his neck, I want to make sure that I get some of that out over the background. So if you see, I'm just very gently pushing out so that I have a roughlier edge. I don't have a flat, doesn't look like somebody came by and combed him. But I don't necessarily want to go overboard and have, you know, lots of fluff there. But I would go back around every edge that looks like I need to fix a little right here. And if I don't like what happened, then I'll just keep going over it and I'll blend it away. The first stroke is usually your prettiest. So when we were painting in here and I just, you know, came in with the next color and accidentally, let's do it. Let's get lighter in here, more orangey. So a little cad yellow and cad orange together. More yellow than orange because that orange is very strong. So right in here, I want to lighten this area up. I'm going to take a stroke and I'm just going to leave it. I don't want to keep going over it and over it because that will blend it away. So as I'm coming in, it's almost like, think about the airplane landing. So I'm up in the air above my canvas, and then I'm coming in, I'm pushing down and laying a little bit more pressure, and that's dropping the paint off. And if that doesn't work, say you got in here and you just kept blending and blending, wait for it to dry and then come back and just add a few of those feathers on top. So let me finish up the tail here, and I'm not even sure time-wise what we're doing, but I'm gonna finish. Okay, so the edge of some of these feathers, I'd like them to show up a little bit more. So I need to be aware of what I have behind it. I have a light value behind it. So if I put a light edge on the edge of that feather, you're not going to see anything, are you? Because light against light is not going to show up. If this was, if I had wanted to be able to paint light feathers here, then I would have put a dark behind it. But I can make this feather pop forward with the dark value. So let me go into, let's see, that is phthalo green and a little phthalo blue. And I'm going to come here on the very edge and pull in. It's sort of the opposite of what we did when we put the highlight on and pulled in towards the feather on these feathers here. That's not going to show up if I do it on the background because I'm against that light color, so I'm going to go in with the dark value. And I don't want to do that to every single feather because then I'm going to, you know, it's going to make everything look stiff. It's not going to be special anymore. When I had started this feather direction, I don't want to keep all of these spines here because that's also going to make it look stiff. So I'm going to get rid of some of them. I'm just going to blend it away a little bit. So I can show some of them, but not all of them. And I want to make sure that my edge is varied. So here, the shapes are different from feather to feather. The edge, I don't have a little, you know, try not to set up a pattern. Easier said than done. And I want to switch colors so that I'm not using this same blue here, green here that I'm using here. Here is switched a little bit more violet. But what's going to happen as you go along is you're going to pick up the color that you have, you know, next to it. So it's going to change it. So you don't necessarily need to worry so much about that. I don't like this line here, so I'm going to get rid of it. It's just interfering. And I painted these feathers, but I am not going to paint in another entire feather. I have those three. That's all I need. And that's all I see. So that's all I'm going to do. Now down in here, when this part of the bird is further behind, so you're not going to see all those details. You just might see a shape back there. And I want to make sure the shapes are pretty and not repetitive as they go out over that background.
less is really more. I mean, you hear that all the time, but it's true, especially when when you're doing detail. If I do detail, 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 my viewer's not going to really know where to look. I got a little bit of a drip here from my using my walnut oil. Let me grab a. So, do you see that? I just want to get rid of that. Okay, let's see. Anything else that I want to put in here? Oh, I will do a foot for you. Is that going to show? I'm going to tip this down just a little bit so you can see the foot. And I'll just paint one in. They're not that interesting. But sometimes it's difficult. It's you know what? It's the same thing. It's a shapes and value. So if you can get the shape and the value, you're golden. So okay, so dark on the shadow side, and that was just my same mix that I used everywhere else. It's transparent red and a little ultramarine blue. Then this side is light, so I need to have some dark behind it, so you're going to be able to see that. Let me grab I do it with my brush. So some dark green right next to the leg. That sets me up to put the highlight there, which is yellow, ochre, and white. I don't want to have anything very bright here, and bright meaning intense color, and I don't want it to be too light because I don't really want to drag your attention down to the feet. But you do need to have something, you know, you can't just leave it alone and not have anything showing, because then that will be noticeable too. And I'm doing a foot from memory, but I would look up what the feet look like. This rooster, you can't see his feet because there's grass there, and there's only 3 toes, so I'm not going to add 4. That would not be right. Okay, so something like that, and then I can pull the grass up over it, and you'll see that there's something there, but I don't have to really paint the whole foot. I do think I would like a little bit more color down there, so just a little yellow ochre in the medium value area, and then their feet are quite big. It's surprising. So let me get something down in here. And then some of them have these little spurs back in the back of their legs. This one does. I painted one that had a little band around its leg. That was kind of fun. All right, so that's probably all I would do there, and then I'd pull grasses up over it. But let me show you a little bit of a grass detail. Hi, Chris. It's nice to see you here. Okay, so right in here, I'll just... I don't have a big space here. How could I lose a brush? That's pretty funny. Oh, here it is. All right, so let's just get some filling in here in between these two areas. And I'm just moving that color that I had put down with my palette knife, moving that around. Okay, so let's get a darker value. So see, I'm just using the colors that are left here on my palette, ultramarine blue and a little phthalo green. I want something really nice and dark, and I'm going to add a little alizarin crimson to it to tone it down and to make it darker. So I need to have some dark patches, otherwise you're not going to be able to see the light patches that I put on. And I think I'm actually going to, let's do that with the palette knife. All right, so I have some dark on there. Now I can come in with yellow, cad yellow, and a little bit, oh, I have some cad yellow green here I haven't used. That's always a nice color. So I'm thinking, even though I'm using the knife, I'm thinking about the stroke direction too of the grass blades and how long they are. So In this area, they're going to be a little bit longer, so my knife is dropping off the paint a little bit longer. And then I'll come back and do a little detail area for you too. But so I think what you've learned is that the way you're moving your brush sets up the pattern, the feathers or the grass or whatever, without you having to really think too hard about it and drawing each individual feather or each individual grass blade. So I just have that, almost that just a motion of that, the way that the paint is little ridges of paint there. And it helps it look like grass. And the color is the other thing that's going to give you that. So then at the very end, I would come with a flat brush. Actually, I'm going to use the filbert, but it has a nice chisel, so I can use that chisel to my advantage. And I'm going to come in with some dark blades on my light and light blades against the dark, so that it shows up. So I'm going to start off with the dark, a dark green, ultramarine blue, cad yellow, and a little bit of earth color or alizarin crimson, whatever you were using, and just be consistent. And this dark grass I want to show up against the light, so I'm pulling up some blades here that are not super distinct yet. Okay. And then I can pull up some lighter grass in front of the dark patch. Again, I'm just going to use a little the chisel end of my brush, and I do that over most of the grass. And then the very last thing I'll do is choose a few areas that that are further forward, and then put in some actual grass blades with my liner brush. So I'm not going to do a lot of that because it's not, that's just not my style. That's not what I want to do. And it's certainly, if you like that look and you want to put more individual grass blades in there, then, feel free to do that. But I'll just put in a few. Then I'll go back with the lighter grass, maybe. I wouldn't do it at the edge of the canvas, but closer in toward how about right in here? I'm not going to do too much there. Hi, Kathy. Nice to meet you. And again, if you got in here at the very end, you can go back and watch the replay. I'll put it back on as soon as I get off here. And I have a blog post that talks about my 5 best tips for painting roosters. And that's at my blog on lena-ferrara.com. So, Becky, yes, it does. The effects of the palette knife is really a nice foundation, and it's fun. And painting's supposed to be fun, right? Except we stress ourselves out so much about, oh my God, I didn't do this correctly, or I didn't, it doesn't look perfect or the way I want it to look, and then that's, I think I like to be a little bit forgiving, and then go back. I can go back and finish up or add things if I didn't get something right, So I don't necessarily worry about that. I used to, but I've learned over the years that it all works out. You can always repaint it, or you could throw it away. But the more you paint, the better you get, the faster you get, the more fun it is. So that's my encouragement to you, is to keep painting. And the time went by so fast. And it does when you're painting by yourself too. But I really appreciate that you were all here, and I'd love to hear comments, and type in where you're from, and email me afterwards or comment afterwards too. But thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoyed this rooster. So take care of yourselves. See you next week. I don't know what I'm painting yet. If you have an idea and you want to type it in, go ahead. But Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, same place. I changed it over to my studio page instead of my personal page because I can do more things with the video this way. So it's nice to see you again. And I actually forgot. Hi, you can actually see my face this time. So nice that you were here. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week. Take care. Okay, Sherry, I see. Grisaille. Oh, love watching you. Love that you could be here. Thank you. Bye-bye.